this place real? That depends. If real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Pikachu, I have in my hand 2 pills. You take the blue pill, and the story ends now. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the Diglett hole goes. But be warned, dive too deep, and you may never return.
um their BGS 10 and Black Label rate is just insane. Where it's like most of the cars they send, it's almost most of the cars they send get a BGS 10 or Black Label.
It's interesting.
So it's one of those things where
you know, and I think this has been talked too, where there's been certain cars that have been altered, and this is another thing that people are talking about, doctoring certain cards, or like, you know, shining up cards or smoothing out corners. And listen, technology is getting way better, so you might you might turn a 7 into a 9 now. And it's kind of like, and it may be hard to detect. So I've heard PSA has done things as far as if it shows signs of tampering, they're just not going to grade it, or they're not sure, but it could be, but they really have no way of proving it has or hasn't been. They're not going to grade it. That has made some people mad who pull stuff straight out of a pack, off a first off the line release. And they're like, no, I pulled this off out of pack. This is not.
You know, with all that you're saying there, I feel like the thing that I wish is that there was just more transparency behind the process. And because, you know, like you said, you know, it might be that, you know, in the first thing you were saying about certain group submitters maybe getting higher grades, it's very possible that it's related to what you were saying. Like if you're a group submitter that is really taking a close look on what you're submitting, and you're only submitting in ones that you have a strong inkling that it's going to get like a high grade, and you're not sending in the other ones, and you really have a good eye, like that's going to increase your gem percentage for sure. But we can't know. There's so much that we can't know because it's behind a veil. You know, we don't know the process. We know that there's potential for human error. We know that we don't even know, like when a group submitter sends their cards in there, is that group submission like go to a special place just for the group submitters, or do they get spread out among all the different graders in an equal way? Like we don't know how anything works in the grading companies, which I don't like. Like I feel like if they're so important to the industry, like the collector community who's using their services so regularly and spending so much money, like we should know more about what's going on and the processes and everything. And I feel that across all the grading companies, I feel like transparency is lacking, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of things are kind of close too. It's kind of like, I think and it may not be as many, but it's like so many more people are using grading companies now. There's so many more cars that are getting sent in for grading, where you're gonna probably have more kind of gray areas, where it's like, okay, is this a PSA 9 or is this a PSA 10? And there's probably some stuff that got, and also the graders are different. A lot of them have different experience levels. Maybe there's multiple people looking at a car, but if you're trying to get stuff through the door, especially for the newer products, like a lot of it's less now, but I mean, at one point, like people, if they just had cars, they just sent it in. They didn't really look at the condition or anything. They just sent in, and you got a ridiculous. That's why you had the backlog, and it probably gets to the point where it's like, yo, we only have like 30 seconds or a minute to look at this card.
And it changes the relative sense of what a grade is going to be, because when people were sending in cards early on, and maybe they ended up as sometimes even a PSA 7 straight from a pack, PSA 8 straight from packs, these were common. But now people, not everybody, but a lot of people have a much better sense for if something has a good chance of getting a gem mint, or at the least like a PSA 9, or the equivalent of a PSA 9. So there's a lot more of those cards coming in. So it seems like it changes the relative grade of everything coming in, because you can't give everything a PSA 10. If people are better at choosing the cards to send in and more likely sending in PSA 10s, PSA can't just start giving more 10s, so they have to start giving more 9s just to keep it like the relative to the other cards that are coming in at that time, not relative to the cards that came in 2 years ago. The cards that came in 2 years ago were probably in some ways on a different scale, just because they're comparing them to what they're seeing. So I feel like it's weird.
Yeah, I've seen that. That another thing that's come to my mind is like 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan cards. I wonder how many cards because the PSA 9 in the last 3 or 4 years, the population has grown a lot, and I wonder how many cards that if you sent it in same condition, stayed the same, that you sent in for PSA 9, you send it in, you get a PSA 9. What if you would have sent it in 5-10 years ago with that same card in the exact same condition, you get a PSA 10?
Yeah, that's the question, and that's why I feel it's strange, because I feel like it's a crapshoot. Sometimes yes, but a lot of times no, and I feel like that's not the way grading is supposed to be.
And then also the upcharge thing. I don't like upcharges because
oh gosh, that's a pet peeve of mine. I'm actually making a script right now for a video of pet peeves responding to Baseball Collect, a video by Baseball Collector. You should check it out too.
Okay.
Because he has a challenge for video creators to make videos of pet peeves, and that was one that he mentioned, and that's one that's absolutely true to me. PSA's upcharge is ridiculous to me. It's just so it feels unethical, because I can understand a small upcharge if it reaches into a different level of insurance. If there's a certain insurance, for when you're storing it and when you're shipping it, you need to upcharge a little bit. That's okay. But the amount of upcharge is ridiculous, considering that card is not their card. Like, why are they making more money on a more valuable card when it's not actually changing anything that they're doing? They're doing the same service. It's like, it's really weird. It's like going to a restaurant and you order a burger for $10, but then the chef comes out and says, this burger got the best meat and the freshest lettuce, and this was fresh, this was best. This burger is going to cost you $30. I know it said $10, but this is a better burger. That's a $30 burger. It's crazy.
The other thing that made me think about this, because I got upcharged from a PSA return, and I was like, I wasn't sure that card costs that much anymore. Because there's certain cards, even still today, their cards are still swing in prices, and they upcharge, and then by the time it gets to me a week or 2 weeks later, and I go directly to sell it. Let's say I do an auction or whatever. Let's say I do an auction that has like, I don't know, Probe Team or PW, somewhere like that. And you got a lot of eyes, and it sells for much less. Like, they said it's valued at $6,000 or $10,000, and it sells for $200.
Yeah. And in a world where things like shill bidding are so common too, it's hard to know when with those upper end cards that are possibilities of being upcharged. Those are the kind of cards where shill bidding can affect the market value more than other realms of cards. So, if they're the ones making the choice on what is the value of it, like, there's, even if they make wise choices at times, like, I feel like the upcharge system it creates incentive for corruption. Even if they're not being corrupt, even if they're trying to be honest, like, they have incentive to be corrupt. As a great, that shouldn't be a business can't be structured that way, to have incentive for corruption. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I guess this is like the last topic I guess we didn't touch, but like the rise of kind of like the critical content versus the, I don't know, like the overhype kind of content.
just because like obviously we're talking about this stuff and some of the stuff we're talking about is critical, but like a year ago you had less people talking about it. I know AIH was talking about a lot of this stuff because I actually like watched his channel and stuff, but and I did a video with him not too long ago about some of the stuff, but like definitely not 2 years ago. Like everything was, and this is stuff that's kind of, most of the stuff has kind of always happened or happened before in the hobby. So it's not like it's some revolutionary problem or something. Do you think it's because like people are like losing money now, and it's like now people have gotten into more of reality in a sense? It's like, okay, this isn't like a get rich quick scheme, or this isn't, that mania that happened last year isn't the normal thing.
Yeah, no, that's really good points. I do feel like during the time of the super spike, like it in some ways it makes sense that the kind of channels that people would follow are like, this is happening, this big exciting thing is happening, because everything was going up, and every decision that you could make as far as buying and then selling a week later or 2 weeks later was going to be making you money. It was just like almost inevitable as long as you were an ongoing participant in the market in that space. You couldn't lose. So I think it created a mindset that people were and everybody that was getting drawn in that wasn't in that space before was in that kind of mania. And so it makes sense that those were the kind of channels that people were really focusing on in that time. And it makes sense now that people are starting to become a little bit more like calmed down and trying to understand the market forces a little bit more clearly now, so that they can make wise decisions if they're still in the sports card space, so they can make wise decisions, but with the right kind of, foundation on those decisions. So it makes sense that, that a more educational oriented kind of focus would have to make its way into that sphere, because the mania seekers, I think, the gamblers and stuff kind of started to drift away a little bit more, and the people who are still in the hobby now are more, people who want to know about it and try to figure out how they can make good decisions in the current reality.
Yeah, I think
it makes sense.
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with a lot of stuff too, where you have so many other people. I mean, there are already a bunch of people flowing into the hobby, but then when the pandemic happened, you're just working less, and you just have a break from your everyday life, because like everyday life can get busy for a lot of people, especially like the largest percentage of people buying cars are Americans, and it's kind of like this, I don't know, America's still kind of this grinding culture in a sense, and a lot of people who have like the disposable income are probably working a lot and doing a lot of other stuff. Maybe they have kids, they got a spouse, and they doing other stuff, and a lot of times that takes up a lot of time, and I think a lot of people are probably starting to get back to their everyday life, and they're still in the hobby, but it's just like the money that they're putting in, they're probably putting into other stuff too. And then
they have less time to put into it, and and the market is not so manic, so yeah, I think there's all those factors played into the crazy hype. So it makes sense, but I think it's nice that it's come through this gauntlet to a point where people are a little bit more like, thoughtful, I feel, about it now. I mean, as you can see from the rise of, even some of the channels that were a little bit more like mania have shifted a little bit to trying to have a bit more like knowledge here and there. Not always. I mean, there's still shallow stuff out there, plenty of it, but I feel like people know what they're looking for. Hey, what's up, Brian, by the way? And Brian just made a really good comment here. People are more picky on what they're buying now. They're more picky on what they're choosing to watch. They're not just looking for the hype. They're looking for the knowledge more, and what they like, and what they want to search for it more so now. They're not just going out everywhere and like going a little crazy in every space. Like they're picking and choosing spaces a bit more.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of the hype-driven channels, they're probably promoting more expensive cards to buy, And if you're buying those expensive cards, one, like, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Gary Vee. You only got so much money. And now, like, Gary Vee's a little different, right? He can spend millions and millions of dollars on cards. Sports card investor can spend millions and millions of dollars on cards. Most people aren't trying to catch up with them. Like you're gonna run out of money trying to keep up with those people. So
you're probably gonna lose all your money if you try to keep up with those with that kind of pace.
So it's just one of those things where you can't. You just realize it's like, yo, I'm spending how much, and a lot of that money can go pretty quickly, and you're like, wait, how much I spent on cards? And if it's not, you're not getting that return, even if it's staying stagnant, like you're not really getting returns and stuff like that. It's like, maybe I should calm down. And then even with stuff going down, you know, if someone ever had a situation where they spent $600 for a car and now it's worth $50, it's like, oh wait, I need to be careful, because like everything is not gonna stay around the price I buy it for. So I need to, you know, or I can get in serious hurt or financial trouble or whatever. Hopefully there weren't too many people who got into serious financial trouble in cards for the last few years. Hopefully not.
I'm sure there were some. I mean, you know, whoever was holding things at the top, I mean, that came down. A lot of cards came down so significantly. I'm sure a lot of people lost a lot of money in there. I mean, that's why I feel like, you know, as a content creator, like for you and I, like in my mind, like part of our responsibility is to just, you know, is to try to get at least some level of like, okay, just step back, like let's reflect for a little bit, let's see, you know, let's analyze, let's try to you know, figure out what are some certain concepts to step into when making decisions. Let's slow down, you know, think through things. You know, I feel like that's part of the goal, you know, is because you don't want to you know, it's so easy for somebody to get stuck on the top of the mountain on a spike and then lose a significant amount. You know, it's one of the reasons I'm very scared of the high end. You know, the high end. Even if I was extremely wealthy, the high end freaks me out, because the amount of people who are spending in that space is so small that you could have a small exodus of just a handful of people, and the high end market is lost, you know, because there's just not enough demand. So then the prices are gonna crash, and it doesn't seem like a safe space to me at all. I like, just like Brian says here, the $100 to $500 per card on long term, like that's safer. Like a kind of card that if it did go down, the floor isn't necessarily crazy low, and it's not like putting you on the street. You know, like maybe if the cards go down, you have to buckle your belt a little bit, like, you know, eat a little bit more instant noodles for lunch a couple of times a week. You know, like, but it's not going to change your lifestyle in any significant way.